So we are moving into a topic called the coverage plan, and in a minute we'll look at the tool which is called the coverage plan and start discussing why it's important for the IT demand management function to think in terms of covering a certain group of people. I have a couple of stories to illustrate the importance of what we're going to look at. The first story is a story from Finland. I was working in Finland a long time ago for a company called Tietoenator, IT systems integrator, very big in the region. And the sales director was a chap called Pekka, and his nickname was Bulldozer. So I'm sure you can understand and appreciate the warm personality that this chap had. And he was so proud of his nickname that his nickname was actually Bulldozer at te.com. So it was an official nickname. And but he was a very, very nice guy, very proactive. And he had a group of 13 sales managers. So they managed groups of sales reps, but they were also on quota themselves. So he wanted to measure the effectiveness of his salespeople. So he did the following thing. He was wondering how to do this, so he went to the Outlook timetable, and if you open up Outlook in the week view, this is what you'll see Saturday through Monday or through Sunday. So 6 days in the timetable. And then he looked at all of the meetings that were being held during that week. And this person, for example, had a lot of meetings during the week. But only some of these meetings were sales meetings. So what he did was he highlighted the meetings that were sales meetings in red, and came up with a result. So he had 13 direct reports, 13 timetables. Some of the people had red lines all over them. They were spending a lot of time with their customers. Some of the people just had a couple of red lines in their timetables. It was all the same week for one particular time during the year. After this, he went and looked at the results in their CRM system at the time. And, surprise, surprise, he noticed that there was a direct correlation between the amount of time that his managers were spending with the customer and the amount of results, the percentage below or above target that they were receiving. For example, there was one person on minus 20%. So he was not doing very well according to the sales targets. And in this week, this chap just had 2 customer-facing meetings, 2 meetings with the end client. There was another person on 0%, so not really moving anything, but at least not losing anything. And this people had 4 or 5 meetings during the week. There was one person with 16%, and this person had approximately 2 meetings every day during the week. There was one person, the winner, was on 37%. And this person had just 5 red days. Every single day was red. This person never came to the office. They were always at the customer's environment and the customer's site. And so this one particular week was representative of all of the weeks. There was a rough average. It was not a very empirical test, but it was very interesting from a sales perspective. The sales perspective that it was interesting from, as we're in all IT, as we're all in IT, then we'll be able to understand this quite clearly. Within IT, there are 2 different types of sales. There is solution sales or complex sales, and there is box pushing, license sales, commodity sales. For years and years, consultants like me tried to convince customers that there was a difference between commodity-based selling and solution-type selling. Mr. Bulldozer didn't believe this. He thought they're both the same. And with this test, he proved that they are both the same. Yeah? That it doesn't have anything to do with the complexity of the discussion that you're running with the customer. It doesn't have anything to do with your subject matter experience or expertise. It has to do with the amount of time that you're spending with the end customer. So the correlation of customer-facing time and results was clearly demonstrated. This is an extremely interesting result for anybody interested in making sure that sales results stay high. Yeah, and it'll be a discussion you will have with your sales functions on an ongoing basis. Coverage is an extremely interesting topic for all sales departments. As an IT demand manager, you also have 5 days available to you. You also have a list of customers that you've just written down, and you also have the need to communicate and run meetings. Yeah? So it's a big question, how much of my time do I actually spend? The second story sends the same message, but let's have a look at it because it focuses on it from a different perspective. It is still within the sales environment, and it has to do with a company called a French company that sells office supplies. So it sells pens and paper and flip charts and anything that you find in an office environment. And this company is unique in this space because they have direct door-to-door salespeople. Yeah? The rest of the market has gone digital, has gone online. If you want to buy your stuff, you've got to go to a website. Yeah? But a direct sales force, and they go from door to door. And so this company did what a lot of companies do when they become rich and successful and rich and famous. What do rich and famous people do when they get rich and famous? What do all American presidents do after they've stopped being president? Travel, get loads of money for saying nothing at conventions. They become consultants. Yeah. Okay. What do rich and famous people do when they get rich and famous?
They write a book.
There we go. They write a book. Yeah. But they don't write it themselves because they're rich and famous. They hire slaves to write their book for them, and then they sign it at the end. Yeah? They get shadow writers to write the book. Companies are no different. Companies, when they become rich and famous, they hire consultants to come in and tell them why they're so cool. Every big company does this. Every big company spends money on consultants. They come in and do an analysis of us and tell us why we're so brilliant. Yeah? And they do this for a very important reason. They want to learn. They want to learn what are we doing good so that we can do more of it? What are we doing bad so that we can do less of it? So this company invites the consultants in, and the consultants say, okay, yeah, we're very interested in doing the work. And they say, well, okay, what are you going to do? And the consultants say, well, we think because you have groups of face-to-face salespeople, we think we need to begin here. And we need to do an analysis of all of these people. And the company says, okay, why don't you begin somewhere else? They say, no, we need to do these guys first. We're pretty sure that this is where the result is. Naturally, the consultants say this because, there are 3,500 of these guys. Yeah? Which means there's, a decent piece of work right up front. They're not stupid. So they do a massive analysis. However, and this is where it starts to get interesting, this is a group of salespeople. 14 different salespeople. They cover a geographical environment. Okay? They cover Berlin, for example. In Berlin, you've for sure got between 10 and 14 people who cover the whole town. Yeah? Or in the country, various people driving around in cars covering a specific geography. This job is really, really tough. Yeah? For you, it's interesting that this job is even tougher than pharmaceutical sales. Yeah? You've got to knock on doors of businesses, industries, of various things and sell stuff that is worth not much money, with not much value. Yeah? And it's an absolutely tough job. What do you think the fluctuation rate is on a job like this? How long do you think people stay in the job on average?
1 year.
A year? It's between 8 and 14 months. That's the amount of time that people actually stay in the job. Yeah? Now that's no time at all. So the consultants were meeting these teams where a couple of the people had been there for a year, most of them had only been there for 2 or 3 months, and a couple of them had been there for 2 years. It was impossible to judge the measure of success based on the skills and the habits of the salespeople themselves. It was impossible because the fluctuation rate was too short, yeah? Or people were changing too quickly. They were meeting some sales teams who were excellent, but most of the sales teams were mediocre, and some of the sales teams were just bad. Yeah? So they had to go back to the company and say, we've studied your sales reps, but we have not found the secret for your success. Yeah? We need to go one step higher. And so the company said, okay, one step higher is this person. This person is called the area sales manager. And this is the leader who is responsible for a group of sales reps. Yeah? And so there were about 70 ASMs, European-wide. So they did an analysis of these guys and they found the answer. Yeah? They found the answer. What they discovered was that if this guy was good, then the results of these guys would be good over time, over a 3 to 5 year period, because they studied it over time. But the owners of the company said to the consultants, and what do they do? And the consultants said, we don't know what they do. What do you mean you don't know? We've just paid you millions to find out what they do. Well, we found out who does it. We found the answer. We found the secret. Yeah, but we knew that. You didn't tell us anything new. You just told us that these are the guys who bring us our success. Great, thank you very much. But what do they do? And so there was this very interesting meeting where the consultants were basically saying, thanks for paying us, but we didn't give you any new information, which is a normal consultant thing to have to do sometimes. And the company is a bit angry and saying, why have we paid you to tell us something that we know already? Yeah? During this conversation, on the projector, on the wall, is a list of the top 10. Yeah? The top 10 ASMs. So there's a list of the top 10. So these top 10 are the best ASMs out of all 70. Yeah? And at that stage, the finance director walks into the room a bit late. And he says, oh, excuse me, I am very sorry, I have late, I have been meeting my girlfriend, Oh no, not that one, the new Angelique, it's France, after all. And then he's kind of looking around and he sees the names on the projector and he says, oh, it is my shit list. And he sits down and everybody's looking at him and saying, excuse me? What did you say? He said, oh, it is my shit list. Your what list? Oh, I am sorry. I do not like those people. Oh, your hit list. Oh, yes, whatever you want to say. That is my a list of people that I do not like. And the owner of the company is going, but these are but these are really important people. He says, I do not care how important they are. I do not like them. And the owner of the company says, but Felipe, why do you not like them? These are our most important area sales managers. Why don't you like them? And Felipe says, because they spend more money on telephones than anybody else in the whole company. And without knowing it, Felipe, the finance director, had discovered the one thing that these guys had in common. The one thing that they had in common was their telephone bill. They spent more money on the phone than anybody else. Yeah? And so the next question was, they spend a lot of time on the phone. So now they're getting these guys in and saying, you spend more money on the phone than anybody else. The area sales manager is going, okay, is that good or bad? It's good. Fine, carry on. What do you speak about and who do you speak to? And what do you think the answer was?
The team and the customer.
Well, not the customers,
Just the team.
just the team. So the best area sales managers were consistent in speaking to their team a lot. In fact, so much that it got the finance director really annoyed with their activities because they were spending too much money on phone bills. Yeah? But then they asked the question, how much time are they spending on the phone? What do you think the answer to this was?
6 or 8 hours in a day.
It was 4.5 to 6 hours per day. Apart from Fridays, when there was a team meeting. 4 days a week, between 4.5 to 6 hours per day. And this was the secret to their success. So when it came to the question, are we able to replicate this? Are we able to do more of the things that make us good? The answer was a very simple yes. But they did say to these area sales managers, what do you speak about? What do you think these guys said? They said, we don't speak much because you can't speak for 6 hours a day. But we do ask a lot of questions. Yeah? And we get them to speak because these guys had a lot of things to say. They were in front of the customers. They had a lot of topics on their mind. So, the moral of this particular story is quite simple. From two different perspectives, these guys were speaking purely about results. Who was getting the results at the end of the day? And the people who were spending more time with their customers were bringing home the financial results. These guys were also speaking about results, but this was more of a leadership angle. Yeah, this was more of an internal discussion angle. And they were taking their job seriously to the extent where they were putting 4.5 to 6 hours a day into the organization in terms of discussion and communication. Yeah? And for me, within the role of the IT demand manager, this is where it now gets a little bit complicated. Are you able to spend 4.5 to 6 hours per day speaking to your customer set? Do you have other jobs as well that are going to block you from being able to do that? I assume the answer is going to be yes. Yeah? Yeah? Are you internal customer service representatives? Yes. Do you have a list of customers? Yes. Some of you have got a very big list of customers from what I can see at the moment. How much time do you need to effectively cover your market? And how many times a week, a month, should you be touching base and speaking to people in a qualitative way to make sure that you are speaking to them? Because the rule, coverage is king, never changes. You cover them better, you get more results. That's a given. We don't even need to discuss it anymore. What we do need to discuss is, do you have the capacity, the time to cover your particular market effectively? And in certain cases, who gets how much attention and who gets the priority and strategy. And that's what we're going to do now. I see a red light. Ah, the red light is on. So we're entering into a discussion about coverage and the ability of the IT demand manager to cover their customer environment. So these stories basically say that if you're able to keep the coverage level high, then you're able to increase the result and get a better result. within the buyer environment at the moment, there is still a great discrepancy between the role of the IT demand manager and the role of the project manager, or the person who is involved in moving a particular demand through the development stage and to the stage where it can be implemented, and very often you're responsible for implementation as well. The fact of the matter is that as soon as a salesperson becomes an implementer or a project manager or both, they lose their ability to sell. Yeah, there is no compromise within this. You lose your ability to sell effectively, which means demand will go uncaptured and unnoticed. Yeah, I know some of you are supermen, but even for Superman, there will be some spaces which go uncaptured and unnoticed. Yeah, there is no real easy way around that. So maybe there is an escalation process. Maybe the organization of the local organizations are just not set up in the right way. Maybe there's no capacity. Maybe there's no resource. Maybe it is what it is. You've got the best deal that you have anyway, and there is no other way of increasing that deal. However, that doesn't resolve the problem. That simply makes you feel a little bit better about it. The problem still remains. As soon as I become a project manager, as soon as I get involved in development, as soon as I start implementing, I don't have any time for anything else, which means the normal interaction with my internal customer base will suffer, and I will not get the stuff that I need from them. But I hear somebody saying, who cares? Right? And it's a good question. Who cares? Or rather, the question who cares is good as long as there is a certain level of strategic thinking behind it. Yeah? On day one, Andreas came in, said, I've got to go and give some bad news to the countries. 50% of budget, bam, has got to be rethought about. A lot of projects are not going to get done. Bam. Yeah? So this is good news. Okay, it's not good news, but for our discussion here, where it comes to who to cover and who not to cover, it's very good news. Yeah, because at the end of the day, a lot of budget cuts are going to come. That's always the way, which means there are certain people who may decrease in the level of coverage that they get. Yeah. Another reality is that you have a list of 22 people. You have a list of 25 people extendable to a list of 45 or 50 people. It's just not manageable. The statistics say that you can deal effectively with a list of 8 to 15 customers in certain stages of the sales process effectively, giving them 1 or 2 decent meetings a week with decent, good professional follow-up. Yeah. However, maybe you don't need to speak to all of those people. Yeah, maybe you can do a prioritization and a strategic kind of thinking. Who am I going to speak to first? Who am I going to speak to second, etc., so that your list becomes smaller and the level of focus and coverage that you're giving becomes bigger. It also maybe requires a different type of conversation, so that you develop 2 different levels of conversation. One, a small one, which is a quick one, which goes to all of your customer base and says, look, I don't have much time. If you've got pressing needs, tell me what they are, and I'll put them on my list and get to them when I can. That type of conversation. And another type of conversation that goes to your stakeholders and says, you are strategically important for me for the following reasons. Therefore, we need to build in the time, because understanding the demand from this particular area of the business is much, much more important for me and for you than other areas of the business. So a certain level of prioritization could also help within this process. But you're still going to have some unhappy customers who are kind of thinking, what about me? Yeah, and that's going to be pretty unavoidable within this environment at the moment. So we've spoken now quite a bit about the importance of coverage. And this word, just again, covering a group of people, covering a particular area of the business. So it obviously makes sense then to start thinking in terms of a coverage plan. Yeah? So this flip chart represents an example of a coverage plan. And I say an example, and it represents because over the past 2 years within Bayer, we have now seen 5 or 6 examples of individual coverage plans which are created by each person individually, sometimes in Outlook, sometimes in Excel, sometimes on a Word or a PowerPoint document, and sometimes it all happens within Lync. So there's no intention to become prescriptive about this, but having a plan means that you can set dates, set milestones, etc. So here's the person and the function that we need to speak to. That needs to be pretty clearly listed. And very interestingly here, a clear definition of what that job role is. If you don't understand what the job role means just from the title, that's quite important too. Then a topic for discussion. This could be a particular project and topic which has been discussed already and you're within the process at some particular stage, or it could be discussion number 1, understanding base level of demand, get to know you meeting, whatever the topic has to be. If you've spoken to them before, then you may have specifics to speak about. If you haven't, then it may be getting to know you. Step 1 is very often in the line as a topic in itself, just to begin to get the ball rolling and to get the relationship off the ground. A date line to give you a way of putting it into the timetable. Outcome and next steps, very, very importantly. What's going to happen next? What do we need to do after this? And a checkbox. Let's tick off the things as they've happened. So I have seen coverage plans which are far more complicated than this, with 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 different columns with different possibilities to fill in different information. I've even seen coverage plans which give you the opportunity to put personal information in about the person that you're speaking to. I've seen coverage plans which give you the ability to put historical data in. These people have done these projects in the past. I've seen coverage plans which go as far as to allow you to put in other information about the person that you're speaking to, their relationship to IT, their attitude, their wishes and desires, their personality. I think all of this stuff can be very useful if you want to do it. The main intention of the coverage plan is to have a rolling plan which looks however long, 2 weeks, 2 months, sometimes a year in advance, especially for busy people who need to get their meetings well in advance. Yeah? And of course, the jour fixe and the meeting type discussions that you have very, very often. Another thing that this brings up is the usage of colleagues and the usage of other people's knowledge within the IT demand management profession. If you've got a meeting with a finance person on day 1 and you meet somebody who's got a meeting with a finance person on day 2, sharing that information, expectations and assumptions can be extremely valuable, because as we've seen a couple of times now, functions very often have very similar attributes to them and very similar demands that are being made and being requested of the demand management function. Okay? So a coverage plan is something that should be cleared, endorsed and used by your boss as a way of tracking activity. Yeah, obviously it makes sense to make sure that they are fully aware of what you're doing, who you're seeing, and what level of work is going into the demand plan itself. And obviously a good documentation of results is clear as well. Any questions to the coverage plan? Great. Here's our IT demand manager. Who are my customers? What am I going to speak to them? And when am I going to speak to them? The 3 fundamental questions. Great. So let's complete these now and then discuss them.